Good evening. We've all heard the phrase, "Hail to the chief," but shouldn't we be hailing all the chiefs? Since the birth of the nation, 43 men have held the office of the presidency. We've had British presidents, sons of presidents, grandsons of presidents, presidents who owned slaves, presidents who were impeached, and presidents who became president either through accident or assassination. Now, why a dozen of these names are still modernly known, there are 30 plus that have been forgotten in our current lexicon, but not from the history books. Now, don't these men deserve to be remembered for their impact on our nation's history as well as for their shattering mediocrity? In this speech, I will be talking about some lesser-known presidents and giving visual aids to help us remember these distinguished individuals. John Tyler, our 10th president, was born into a wealthy family in Virginia, and he inherited his father's lands, political contacts, and his slaves. In the book John Tyler, Accidental President, it says that John Tyler served in the House of Representatives and became the running mate of William Henry Harrison, a general who was known for the Battle of Tippecanoe. Their running slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. And then it just became Tyler when William Henry Harrison died 1 month after taking the presidency, giving John Tyler the nickname his accidency. But he only served 1 term and returned to Virginia, where he led efforts to secede from the Union and join the Confederate House of Representatives, earning him a new nickname, our traitor president. Now, I find that visual association is the best way to remember names and faces, and I found out that John Tyler has at least a passing resemblance to British actor Robert Powell, who is best known for playing Jesus in the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth. So if you must remember John Tyler, remember him as Racist Jesus. Of course, John Tyler was not the only president to take over after his predecessor died. Millard Fillmore, our 13th president, was one of our most ineffectual and unpopular presidents, according to the Thomas Rowland book, Millard Fillmore, The Limits of Compromise. Fillmore was born in a log cabin in New York to extreme poverty and had to steal books in order to educate himself. According to the Funk and Wagnalls Encyclopedia, he took over after the death of Zachary Taylor. He was his vice president, even though the two of them were political and social enemies and hated one another. Fillmore was very unpopular because he supported the Fugitive Slave Act, which allowed runaway slaves in the North to be transported legally back to the South to their slaveholders. And while Millard Fillmore doesn't seem like much of a matinee idol, he does bear a creepy resemblance to film and TV star Alec Baldwin. So if we must remember Millard Fillmore, we should remember him as the least popular of the Baldwin brothers. And that's saying quite a lot. Now, the slavery issue continued to grow and become more and more tense. And a couple years later, we had our 15th president, James Buchanan, often considered one of our worst presidents. He decided that slave laws were state laws, and that he refused to become involved in an issue that he thought would resolve itself. When South Carolina seceded from the Union, he refused to step in, saying the federal government had no right to block the secession. The most interesting fact about Buchanan is that he was a lifelong bachelor, our only bachelor president, and his sexuality is still questioned to this day. In an article from mentalfloss.com, he was longtime roommates with a Senator Rufus King. They lived together for 10 years, even though they were both wealthy enough to afford their own accommodations. Former President Andrew Jackson called them Miss Fanny and Aunt Nancy, and they were known to display a close personal intimacy. When Buchanan took office, his family burned all of his personal letters, which could suggest that there were things in there that could have implicated Buchanan. Now, if we knew more details about James Buchanan's love life, it would make a very interesting film, in which case he could have been played by Sir Anthony Hopkins. So if we must remember James Buchanan, 15th president, we should remember him with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. James Buchanan left a mess behind. Abraham Lincoln took over and we were thrust into the Civil War. But after the war and a couple more presidents, we came upon Rutherford B. Hayes, our 19th president. And according to Ask Me Anything About the Presidents, he was considered by his peers the most mediocre-looking man ever to run for office. I mean, look at that face. It looks like an unmade bed. According to biography.com, he was the president that ended the Reconstruction era. He pulled the last Northern troops out of the South and returned the South to states' laws. His wife Lucy was also the first college-educated First Lady, and she implemented a strict no alcohol, no gambling, no cursing, no swearing policy in the White House, and no dancing, which could be why his opponents didn't want him to take the office. Now, for someone as singular looking as Rutherford B. Hayes, it's hard to find a contemporary match, but I found the best match to be the old man from Home Alone.
Oh my God.
So hopefully, the next time you watch Home Alone, you will remember our 19th president, Rutherford B. Hayes. In conclusion, most of us can move through life without knowing the names and deeds of our ex-presidents, but history is more than just facts and figures. Learning how our leaders struggled and failed gives us a clear indication of how history repeats itself and how we may be able to prevent our country from suffering more bouts of political lunacy and mediocrity. Thank you.